more days away now, and in North Dakota, voters will decide on ballot measure 1. It covers term limits. Valley News Team's Kellen Harmon joins us now live in studio to break down how common these types of rules are across the country and how this could affect North Dakota. Kellen.
Thanks, Justin. Measure 1 is looking to set term limits for officials such as the House, Senate, and governor positions in North Dakota, limiting all of them to 8 years. As it stands, North Dakota is one of only 14 states with no term limits set for governor. You'll see Minnesota also doesn't have term limits, but South Dakota and Montana do. However, it's just about the opposite for state legislators, as North Dakota is in the majority of 35 states with no term limit set. Once again, North Dakota's law aligns with Minnesota. Those in support of Measure 1 say it will be imperative in getting citizens involved and educated with government across the state, while others oppose the measure, saying that an even balance of new members and older experienced members are needed to run things smoothly.
Term limits realigns power back to the citizens of the state. It increases voter engagement. It dramatically increases the number of candidates running. You have a very small number who serve 20, 30, even 40 years, and they tend to cycle through leadership positions, and essentially a very small group of people has almost all the political power.
You need a good mix of longer tenured individuals along with new individuals bring new ideas. That naturally happens. The voters can decide if they want to keep this individual in or not, no matter how good or bad of a job they're doing at representing them.
There are a few important things to note about the measure. 1, this is state level, and local and federal level officials will not be affected. 2, those already in office will be grandfathered in a sense. For example, Governor Doug Burgum could still run for an additional 8 years if this measure is passed. 3, the term limits are for each respective position. So, for example, someone who served 8 years in the House of Representatives could still serve 8 more years in the Senate, and vice versa. Justin?
All right, thanks for that explanation.